Jake Morrison walked through the long metal halls of Zenith Prime Station. His boots made soft sounds on the cold floor. Around him, alien voices spoke in languages he did not know. Sometimes they would stop talking when he passed by. Then they would start again, and Jake could hear them laughing. He had been on this space station for 6 months now, 6 long months of being the only human among hundreds of aliens. The Galactic Federation had said it would be good for relations between Earth and other worlds. They said humans needed to learn how to work with alien species. Jake thought they just wanted to get rid of him. The station floated in deep space, far from Earth. It was bigger than any city Jake had ever seen. Thousands of aliens lived and worked here. There were the tall, crystal-skinned Alterians who looked down at everyone. There were the bug-like Cathara who clicked their teeth when they were angry. The Nethys floated around like living clouds of gas. And the granite walked on 4 legs, their bodies made of living rock. Jake stopped at a window and looked out at the stars. Space was beautiful, but it felt cold and empty, just like how he felt most days. Human. The voice behind him was sharp and cold. Jake turned around. Commander Vextar stood there. The Alterian skin was like blue crystal, and his eyes glowed white. He was tall, much taller than Jake. All the aliens on the station were afraid of him. "Yes, Commander," Jake said. "The air recycling system in Section 7 needs work. Go fix it." Vexitar's voice showed no emotion. "Do not break anything. Your people are known for making things worse." Jake felt heat rise in his face, but he kept quiet. "Yes, sir." Vextar walked away without another word. 2 Cathara guards followed him. As they passed Jake, they clicked, their teeth, and made sounds that Jake knew were insults. Jake picked up his toolkit and headed to Section 7. The halls were busy with aliens going about their work. None of them looked at him. To them, he was invisible. Sometimes Jake thought that would be better than the stares and whispers. Section 7 was in the lower part of the station. The air, recycling systems were loud here. Jake found the broken unit and got to work. It was simple work, but important. Without these machines, everyone on the station would die. But nobody cared about that. They just saw it as work for humans to do. As Jake worked, he heard footsteps. He looked up and saw Lieutenant Zara Lynn watching him. She was different from the other aliens. Her skin was pale blue and her hair was white like snow. Her eyes were violet, like the flowers his mother used to grow. She came from a warrior, race called the Valkyrans. "Human," she said. Her voice was not cruel like the others, but it was not friendly either. "Lieutenant," Jake said, going back to his work. "You know what you are doing," she said. It was not a question. "I have been fixing machines since I was a boy," Jake replied. "My father taught me." Zara Lynn was quiet for a moment. "The Cathara say humans are stupid. They say you can only do simple work." Jake tightened a bolt and did not look up. "What do you think?" "I think," Zara Lynn said slowly, "that you are still here. After 6 months of their insults, you are still doing your job. That says something." Jake looked at her then. Her violet eyes seemed to see right through him. "It says, I have nowhere else to go." "No," Zara Lynn said. "It says you do not give up easy." Before Jake could answer, she walked away. Her boots made no sound on the metal floor. Warriors from her planet were trained to move like ghosts. Jake finished his work and moved to the next broken machine. This was his life now. Fix things, listen to insults, eat alone, sleep alone. Every day was the same. In the mess hall that evening, Jake sat by himself at a small table in the corner. The alien food was strange, but it kept him alive. Around him, groups of aliens ate and talked and laughed. The Alterians sat together, looking down at everyone else. The Kithara made clicking sounds as they ate. The Granite did not need to eat the same food, but they came to the mess hall to be social. A group of young Alterian officers sat at the table next to Jake. They spoke in their own language, but Jake had learned some words after 6 months. They were talking about him. "Look at the human," one said. "So small and weak." "I heard humans live less than 100 years, said another. "How can they learn anything in such a short time?" "They cannot even change their skin color to show emotion," laughed a third. "How primitive." Jake kept eating, pretending not to understand. This happened every day. He had learned to ignore it, mostly. "I wonder what Earth is like," said the first one. "A planet full of these weak creatures." "Probably dirty and primitive," said another. "No wonder they can only fix machines. It is all their small brains can handle." Jake's hand tightened around his fork, but he did not look up. Getting angry would not help. It would only make things worse. Later that night, Jake was alone in his small room. It was tiny, smaller than the rooms given to any alien officer of his rank. But it was quiet, and it was his. He looked at a picture of Earth on his wall. Green trees, blue sky, white clouds. It seemed like a dream now. He thought about Lieutenant Zaralyn and what she had said. Maybe she was right. Maybe staying here, doing his job despite everything, did mean something. But Jake was not sure what. Tomorrow would be another day of fixing machines and listening to insults. Another day of being alone among the stars. Jake turned off the light and lay down on his narrow bed. Through the small window he could see the stars. They were beautiful, but they felt very far away, just like home. The alarm bells rang loud through Zenith Prime Station. Jake dropped his tools and ran toward the command center. Red lights flashed in the halls. Aliens moved quickly, their faces showing worry. In the command center, Commander Vextar stood at the big screen. His crystal skin was glowing brighter than usual, which meant he was upset. Officers from different alien races stood around him, all talking at once. "What happened?" Jake asked a Kithara technician. The bug-like alien clicked his teeth at Jake. "Not your business, human. Go back to your machines." But Jake could hear what they were saying. An away team had gone to explore the moon called Kepler 438c. Something had gone wrong. The team was trapped underground, and their radio signals were getting weaker. "We need to rescue them now," said Lieutenant Zaralyn. She stood straight and tall, her white hair bright under the red lights. Commander Vextar turned to look at the big screen. It showed the moon's surface, gray and empty. The away team went into an old alien structure. Some kind of defense system turned on. The entrance collapsed. Jake moved closer to hear better. On the screen, he could see the rescue ships trying to dig through the rocks, but every time they used their energy weapons, more rocks fell down. "Sir," said a granite officer, his rock-like body making grinding sounds as he moved, "our scanners show the defense system is still active. It attacks anything that uses advanced technology." "Then we use more power," Vextar said. "Break through with force." Jake watched as another rescue ship fired at the rocks. A bright energy beam shot down from the alien structure. The rescue ship had to fly away fast to avoid being hit. "Commander," Jake said, stepping forward, "maybe there is another way." The command center became quiet. All the aliens turned to look at Jake. Vextar's white eyes glowed with anger. "Did I ask for your opinion, human?" "No, sir, but I have an idea," Jake said. His heart was beating fast, but he had to try. "The defense system only attacks high technology. What if we used simple tools instead?" The Altarian officers laughed. One of them spoke up. "Typical human thinking. Use rocks and sticks when we have energy weapons." "The defense system is thousands of years old," Jake continued. "It was built to fight against advanced weapons. Maybe it would not recognize simple human tools as a threat." Commander Vextar's skin grew even brighter. "Your primitive methods will not work where our advanced technology has failed." "But, sir, the team is running out of air," Jake said. "We have to try something different." "Enough!" Vextar shouted. "You are here to fix machines, not give military advice. Leave the command center now." Jake felt his face get hot with shame, but he left as ordered. In the hallway, he could still hear the aliens talking about different rescue plans. None of them mentioned his idea. Hours passed. Jake tried to work on the machines, but his mind kept thinking about the trapped team. Every few minutes, he checked the station's communication system. The signals from the away team were getting weaker. Finally, Jake could not wait anymore. He made a decision that could get him in big trouble. He went to the small ship bay where they kept the maintenance shuttles. These were simple ships used for fixing things outside the station. Jake started up one of the shuttles. It was old and basic, with no fancy weapons or shields. Just what he needed. "Stop right there," a voice said behind him. Jake turned around. Lieutenant Zara Lynn stood in the doorway of the shuttle bay. Her violet eyes were hard to read. "I have to try," Jake said. "Those people will die if someone does not help them." "Commander Vextar will throw you in prison for stealing a shuttle," Zara Lynn said. "I know," Jake replied. "But I cannot just sit here and do nothing." Zara Lynn looked at him for a long moment. "Your plan might work," she said quietly. "The old defense systems were built to fight against energy weapons and shields. A simple ship like this might get through." "Will you stop me?" Jake asked. Zara Lynn stepped aside. "I did not see anything," she said. "But be careful, Jake Morrison. Dead heroes help no one." Jake was surprised. It was the first time she had used his name. The shuttle was slow compared to the rescue ships, but it was quiet. Jake flew toward the moon, staying low to avoid the station's scanners. He did not want Commander Vextar to stop him before he could try. The moon's surface was covered with gray dust and old craters. Jake found the alien structure easily. It was a huge black building that looked like it had been there for thousands of years. Around it, he could see the marks where the rescue ships had tried to dig. Jake landed his shuttle far from the structure. He put on his spacesuit and gathered simple tools from the shuttle: ropes, metal bars, and hand-powered drills. Nothing that used energy or made electronic signals. The walk to the collapsed entrance took 20 minutes. Jake's suit felt heavy, and his breathing sounded loud in the quiet. The alien structure was even bigger up close, made of smooth black stone that seemed to absorb light. The entrance was blocked by huge rocks. Jake could see where the energy weapons had tried to blast through, but the rocks were thick and hard. Between the rocks, Jake could see small spaces where air might be getting through. "Hello?" Jake shouted into his radio. "Can anyone hear me?" Static filled his ears. Then, very weak, he heard a voice. "Who is that? Help us!" "This is Jake Morrison from Zenith Prime. I am going to get you out." "Morrison!" The voice sounded confused. "The human? How did you get past the defenses?" "I walked," Jake said, starting to tie ropes around the smaller rocks. No energy weapons, no shields, just me and some rope. Jake worked for hours, moving rocks one at a time. It was slow work, but the defense system did not attack him. Whatever sensors it used, they did not see him as a threat. As he worked, Jake could hear the trapped aliens talking on the radio. There were 5 of them, including 2 Alterians, a Kithara, and 2 Granite. They had been exploring the structure when it collapsed. "Your air is getting thin," Jake told them. "I need you to stay calm and save your breathing." "A human is trying to rescue us," one of the Alterians said. Jake could hear the disbelief in his voice. "Just stay quiet and let me work," Jake replied. The sun was setting on the moon when Jake finally made a hole big enough for someone to crawl through. His arms ached, and his suit was dirty with moon dust. "I have an opening," Jake said into his radio. "Who can move?" "I can," said the Kithara, "but the space looks very small." "You will have to crawl," Jake said. "I will tie a rope around you in case the rocks shift." One by one, Jake pulled the aliens out of the collapsed structure. Each one was weak and scared, but alive. The last one out was an Alterian officer named Sub-Commander Keltron. He was injured and could barely move. "Why did you come?" Keltron asked as Jake helped him toward the shuttle. "We have treated you badly." Jake was quiet for a moment. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally. The trip back to Zenith Prime was crowded with 6 people in a shuttle made for 3. But everyone was alive, and that was all that mattered to Jake. When they docked at the station, Commander Vextar was waiting for them. His crystal skin was so bright it hurt to look at. Behind him stood other officers, including Lieutenant Zara Lynn. Jake helped the last of the rescued aliens off the shuttle. Then he turned to face Commander Vextar. "Lieutenant Morrison," Vextar said, his voice cold as space. "You are under arrest." Jake sat in the detention cell for 3 days. The room was small and cold, with only a bed and a small window that looked out at the stars. Guards brought him food twice a day, but nobody talked to him. On the 3rd day, the cell door opened. Lieutenant Zara Lynn stood there with 2 guards. "Come with me," she said. Jake followed her through the station halls. Aliens stopped to stare at him as they passed. Some looked angry, others seemed curious. Jake kept his eyes forward and said nothing. They went to Commander Vextar's office. The commander sat behind a large desk made of the same crystal material as his skin. His white eyes glowed as he looked at Jake. "Sit down, Morrison," Vextar said. Jake sat in the chair across from the desk. Zara Lynn stood beside the door, her face showing no emotion. "Your actions were against direct orders," Vextar began. "You stole station property. You put yourself and others in danger. Do you understand this?" "Yes, sir," Jake replied. "Then why did you do it?" Jake thought about his answer. "Because 5 people were going to die, and I thought I could save them." Vextar leaned forward. "You thought your primitive human methods could succeed where our advanced technology failed?" "I thought it was worth trying, sir." The commander's skin grew brighter. "Your people always think they know better. You act without thinking, without planning." "Sometimes action is more important than planning," Jake said quietly. Vextar stood up quickly, his chair falling backwards. "You dare to lecture me about leadership?" Before Jake could answer, an alarm started ringing through the station. Red. Lights flashed in the office. A voice came over the communication system. "All senior officers to the command center. Emergency situation. All senior officers to the command center." Vextar looked at the lights, then at Jake. "Stay here," he ordered. "Do not move." He left the office quickly. Zara Lynn started to follow, then stopped. She looked back at Jake. "What do you think it is?" she asked. "I do not know," Jake replied. "But it sounds bad." Zara Lynn stood there for a moment, then made a decision. "Come with me." The commander said to stay here. "I am ordering you to come," she said, "as your direct superior officer." Jake followed her to the command center. Inside, aliens were running around, checking screens and shouting orders. Commander Vex's Tar stood at the main display, his crystal skin flashing with bright colors. On the big screen, Jake could see a large ship in space. It was not a Federation ship. The design was rough and dangerous looking, with weapons mounted all over it. "What is that?" Jake asked a nearby technician. "Pirate ship," the alien replied without looking at him. "They are attacking a human colony ship." Jake felt his heart stop. On the screen, he could see another ship. It was white and peaceful-looking, with no weapons. The pirate ship was firing at it with energy weapons. "We received a distress call 20 minutes ago," Zara Lynn explained quietly. "The colony ship New Horizon is carrying 10,000 humans to a new settlement. The pirates want their cargo and do not care about the people. We have to help them." Jake said, "Federation protocol requires us to wait for military support," Commander Vex's Tar announced to the room. "A battle cruiser will arrive in 48 hours. 48 hours? Jake stepped forward. "Those people will be dead by then." The command center became quiet. All the aliens turned to look at Jake. Vexitar's eyes grew bright with anger. "You are supposed to be in detention," he said coldly. "Commander," Jake said, ignoring the threat in Vexitar's voice, "we have weapons on this station. We have shields. We can fight those pirates." "This is not a military station," Vexitar replied. "We are scientists and researchers. We do not fight battles." "Then those 10,000 humans will die while we watch," Jake said. "That is unfortunate," Vexitar said, "but not our responsibility." Jake felt anger rise in his chest like fire. "Not our responsibility? They are people, living beings who need help." "They are not Federation citizens," said an Alterian officer. "They are just human colonists." "Just humans?" Jake stepped forward. Several guards moved to stop him, but he kept talking. "Is that how you see us? As things that do not matter?" "Morrison, be silent," Vextar ordered. But Jake could not be silent. Not now. "You rescued me when I was the only human on this station. You let me work here, live here. But when 10,000 of my people need help, they are just colonists." "The situation is different," Vextar said. "No," Jake replied. "The situation is the same. People need help, and we can give it." Jake turned to look at all the aliens in the command center. 3 days ago, I risked everything to save 5 people who had treated me badly. I did it because it was right. Now 10,000 innocent people are about to die, and you want to follow protocol? Your emotional outbursts change nothing, Vexitar said. We will wait for proper military support. Jake looked at the screen again. The colony ship was trying to run, but the pirate ship was faster. Soon there would be nothing left to save. Then I will go alone, Jake said. You will do no such thing, Vextar ordered. Guards, take him back to detention. As the guards moved toward Jake, Lieutenant Zara Lynn stepped between them. Wait, she said. Everyone in the command center turned to look at her. Her violet eyes were bright with determination. The human is right, she said. Honor demands that we help those who cannot help themselves. Lieutenant, Vextar warned, you are speaking out of line. Am I? Zara Lynn asked. My people have stories about a warrior race. They are small and weak compared to other species, but they never give up. They fight for what is right, even when they cannot win. She looked around the room at all the different aliens. I thought those stories were myths, but I have watched this human for months. He fixes our machines without thanks. He saved our people without reward. He stands here now willing to die for strangers. Zara Lynn turned back to Commander Vextar. If we let those colonists die while we have the power to save them, what does that make us? The command center was completely quiet. On the screen, the pirate ship was getting closer to the colony ship. Sub-Commander Keltran, one of the Alterians that Jake had rescued, stepped forward. "Lieutenant Zara Lynn is correct," he said. "This human risked his life for us. Honor demands we return the favor." "I agree," said the Kithara officer Jake had saved. His clicking sounds were softer now, almost respectful. One by one, other aliens in the command center began to speak up. Not all of them, but enough. They had seen what Jake was willing to do, and it had changed something in them. Commander Vextar looked around the room, his crystal skin shifting through different colors. Finally, he turned back to the main screen. "Prepare the station weapons," he said quietly. "All ships ready for battle." Jake felt relief flow through him like cool water, but he also felt something else. For the first time since coming to Zenith Prime, he felt like he belonged. "Thank you," he said to Zara Lynn. She nodded once. "Thank me after we save your people." The battle was short, but fierce. Zenith Prime Station and its small fleet of ships fought the pirates with everything they had. Jake worked in the weapons control room, using his knowledge of the station's systems to help target the enemy ships. When it was over, the New Horizon was safe. 10,000 human colonists were alive because aliens had chosen to fight for them. But Jake's victory came with a price he had not expected. 2 weeks later, Jake stood in a formal hearing room. The walls were white and clean, and judges from different alien species sat at a high table. This was not just a station matter anymore. The Galactic Federation itself was putting Jake on trial. The lead judge was an ancient Alterian named High Counselor Thisara. Her crystal skin was so old it looked like clouded glass, and her white eyes had seen centuries of Federation law. "Lieutenant Morrison," she said, her voice echoing in the quiet room. "You are charged with multiple violations of Federation military protocol. How do you answer?" Jake stood straight and tall. "I am guilty of breaking protocol, Your Honor, but I am not sorry for saving lives." A murmur went through the room. In the audience, Jake could see reporters from news services across the galaxy. This trial was being broadcast to billions of beings on thousands of worlds. The prosecutor was a young Alterian named Counselor Vexalin. He was Commander Vextar's nephew, and he did not like humans. "The defendant admits his guilt," Vexalin said, standing up. "Lieutenant Morrison stole station property, disobeyed direct orders, and endangered Federation personnel. Worse, he convinced other officers to join his illegal actions." Jake looked around the room. Some of the aliens who had supported him sat in the audience. Lieutenant Zara Lynn was there, still in her military uniform. Sub-Commander Keltaron sat next to her. Even some of the Kithara and Granite officers had come to watch. "Your Honor," the prosecutor continued, "humans are a young species. They do not understand the importance of law and order. If we excuse Lieutenant Morrison's actions, other humans will think they can ignore Federation rules whenever they want." The prosecutor walked toward Jake. This human believes his emotions are more important than proper military procedure. He thinks human feelings matter more than galactic law. Jake wanted to argue, but his defense attorney had told him to stay quiet. The attorney was a wise old being called a sage, from a species known for their fairness and logic. The prosecution paints a simple picture, the sage said when it was his turn to speak. They say this is about following rules. But sometimes, Your Honor, rules must bend to serve justice. The sage moved to stand beside Jake. 3 months ago, Lieutenant Morrison saved 5 Federation officers using methods that proper military procedure said would not work. 2 weeks ago, he convinced this station's command to save 10,000 innocent lives when proper procedure said to let them die. The old being looked up at the judges. The question before this court is not whether Lieutenant Morrison broke rules. He did. The question is whether saving lives is more important than following procedures. For 3 days, witnesses testified. Some spoke against Jake, saying he was dangerous and could not be trusted to follow orders, but others spoke for him. Sub-Commander Kelt Ran took the witness stand on the 2nd day. His crystal skin was dim, showing his nervousness. I was trapped on that moon for 18 hours, he said. Our air was running out. We thought we were going to die. He looked at Jake. Lieutenant Morrison came alone with simple tools and determination. He worked for hours to dig us out, 1 rock at a time. When I asked him why, he said it was the right thing to do. Keltran paused, his skin growing brighter. Before this, I thought humans were weak and stupid. I was wrong. This human has more courage than any warrior I have known. Lieutenant Zara Lynn testified on the 3rd day. She walked to the witness stand like she was marching into battle, her back straight and her head high. I have served in the Federation, military for 15 years, she said. I have seen many officers make many decisions. Some followed the rules perfectly, but did nothing when people needed help. Others broke rules to do what was right. She looked directly at the judges. My people tell stories of perfect warriors. They are not perfect because they never break rules. They are perfect because they always choose honor over safety, courage over comfort. Zara Lynn turned to look at Jake. Lieutenant Morrison is not the perfect officer described in Federation manuals, but he is the perfect warrior described in Valkyran legends. The most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source. Captain Sarah Newman of the New Horizon appeared by video link from her colony ship. 10,000 people owe their lives to Lieutenant Morrison and the crew of Zenith Prime, she said. My ship carried families, children, elderly people looking for a new home. When the pirates attacked, we had no weapons, no shields, no way to fight back. Captain Newman's voice grew stronger. Federation protocol said Zenith Prime should wait for military support. If they had followed that protocol, every person on my ship would be dead or enslaved. She looked directly into the camera. I do not care about Federation rules. I care about the fact that my 5-year-old daughter is alive today because a human officer chose to do what was right instead of what was easy. On the final day, Jake was allowed to speak for himself. He stood up, slowly feeling the weight of thousands of eyes watching him. Your Honor, he began, I knew I was breaking rules when I went to rescue those officers. I knew I was breaking rules when I asked the station to save the New Horizon. I did it anyway. Jake looked around the room. The prosecutor says humans do not understand law and order. Maybe he is right. We do not always follow rules perfectly. He turned back to the judges. But humans understand something else. We understand that every life has value. We understand that sometimes doing the right thing means taking risks. We understand that courage is not about being unafraid. It is about being afraid and acting anyway." Jake's voice grew stronger. "I am not asking this court to excuse my actions because I am human. I am asking you to judge whether those actions made the galaxy a better place." He sat down. The room was completely quiet. High Counselor Thisara looked at Jake for a long moment. Her ancient eyes seemed to see right through him. "Lieutenant Morrison," she said finally, "this court finds you guilty of violating Federation military protocol." Jake felt his heart sink. In the audience, he could see Lieutenant Zara Lynn close her eyes. "However," the judge continued, "this court also recognizes that your actions saved lives and upheld the highest ideals of the Federation. Therefore, while you are officially censured for insubordination, you are also awarded the Federation Medal of Valor for extraordinary courage in the service of others." The room exploded with sound. Some aliens cheered, others argued angrily. Reporters shouted questions. Jake just sat there, trying to understand what had happened. He had won and lost at the same time. High Counselor Thisara banged her gavel, until the room was quiet again. "Lieutenant Morrison," she said, "your actions have created a difficult situation. You cannot return to Zenith Prime, as your presence there would undermine Commander Vexitar's authority. However, Federation Command has a new assignment for you." The judge's old eyes seemed to smile. "You will train the first integrated human-alien military unit. Your job will be to teach other species what we have learned from you. That sometimes the greatest strength comes not from technology or protocol, but from simple moral courage." As Jake left the courtroom, he felt hands patting his back and voices offering congratulations. But the voice he heard most clearly was Lieutenant Zara Lynn's. "Well done, warrior," she said quietly. "Well done." Jake packed his few belongings into a small bag. His room on Zenith Prime had never felt like home, but after 8 months it was familiar. Now he was leaving for a new assignment, and he did not know if he would ever return. The trial had changed everything. News of the human officer who saved alien lives had spread across the galaxy. Some species praised him as a hero. Others saw him as a dangerous example of human unpredictability. Jake had become famous, but fame felt heavy and uncomfortable. He walked through the station halls one last time. It was different now. Some aliens nodded respectfully when they saw him. Others still turned away or whispered insults, but nobody ignored him anymore. At the shuttle bay, a small crowd had gathered. Sub-Commander Keltron stood with several other Altarian officers. The Cathara he had rescued clicked their teeth in what Jake now knew was a greeting, not an insult. Even some of the granite had come, their rocky faces impossible to read. "We wanted to say goodbye," Keltran said. His crystal skin was bright with emotion. "And to thank you again." "You do not need to thank me," Jake replied. "I did what anyone would do." "No," said the Cathara officer. "You did what you would do. That is why it mattered." Jake shook hands and received formal bows from the aliens who had come. It felt strange. 6 months ago, these same beings had treated him like he was invisible. Commander Vextar appeared at the edge of the crowd. He did not come closer, but he watched with his bright white eyes. Jake caught his gaze and nodded once. Vexitar nodded back. It was not friendship, but it was respect. The crowd began to move away as Jake's transport ship prepared for departure. Soon, only Lieutenant Zara Lynn remained. She stood straight and tall in her military uniform, her white hair bright under the station lights. "So you are really leaving," she said. "Orders are orders," Jake replied. "My new assignment starts in 2 weeks. Training the first mixed-species military unit," Zaralyn said. "That will be interesting work." "I hope so." Jake looked out at the stars through the shuttle bay windows. "I never thought I would be a teacher." "You have been teaching us all along," Zaralyn said quietly. "You just did not know it." Jake turned to look at her. "What did I teach you?" Zaralyn was quiet for a moment. "You taught me that strength is not about how big you are or what weapons you carry. You taught me that honor is not about following rules perfectly. It is about doing what is right, even when it is hard." She looked around the empty shuttle bay. "My people tell stories about perfect warriors. For a long time, I thought those stories were about Valkyrans. Now I think they might be about humans." "I am not perfect," Jake said. "I make mistakes, I get scared, I get angry." "That is what makes you perfect," Zaralyn replied. "You feel fear, but you act anyway. You make mistakes, but you learn from them. You get angry at injustice, but you do something about it." The transport ship's engines started warming up. Jake could hear the low rumble through the station walls. "I should go," he said. "Yes," Zaralyn agreed, but she did not move away. They stood there looking at each other. Jake wanted to say something, but he did not know what words to use. "How do you thank someone who changed your entire life?" "Lieutenant Morrison," a voice called from the transport ship. "We are ready for departure." Jake picked up his bag and started walking toward the ship. After a few steps, he turned back. "Zaralyn," he said. "Thank you for everything." She smiled then, the first real smile he had ever seen from her. "Thank you, Jake Morrison, for showing us what humans really are." Jake boarded the transport ship and found a seat by a window. As the ship pulled away from Zenith Prime, he could see the station getting smaller. Somewhere inside that metal structure, aliens were going about their work. Some of them would remember him. Some might even miss him. The transport ship turned toward open space, and Zenith Prime disappeared among the stars. Jake's new assignment was on a training station near the center of the galaxy. When he arrived, he found something he had never seen before: humans and aliens working together as equals. The mixed-species military unit had volunteers from 12 different races. There were Alterians and Kithara, Valkyrans and Granite, and several species Jake had never met before. But there were also humans. Real humans from Earth and the colonies, not just Jake alone in a crowd of aliens. "Welcome to Forward Base Unity," said Colonel Martinez, the human commanding officer. She was older than Jake, with gray in her black hair and scars on her hands from years of service. "Thank you, Colonel," Jake replied. "I am ready to start work." "Good," Martinez said, "because we have a lot to do. These recruits come from species that have been suspicious of each other for centuries. Your job is to help them learn to trust each other." Jake looked out at the training ground where humans and aliens were learning to work together. It was not easy. Old prejudices died hard. Some aliens still thought humans were too emotional and unpredictable. Some humans thought aliens were cold and unfriendly. But slowly, day by day, things began to change. Jake told them stories about his time on Zenith Prime. He talked about the aliens who had insulted him and the ones who had eventually supported him. He taught them that courage was not about being unafraid, but about acting despite fear. Most importantly, he taught them that every species had something valuable to offer. Humans brought passion and determination. Alterians brought logic and precision. Kithara brought patience and attention to detail. Valkyrans brought honor and strength. "We are not trying to make everyone the same," Jake would tell his classes. "We are trying to make everyone better." 3 months into his assignment, Jake received a message that surprised him. It was from Lieutenant Zara Lynn. "Jake," the message said, "I wanted you to know that things have changed on Zenith Prime since you left. Commander Vextar has started new policies about how different species work together. He says he learned from watching you." The message continued. "I have been accepted for transfer to Forward Base Unity. If the offer is still open, I would like to join your training program. I think there is more I can learn about being a warrior." Jake smiled as he read the message. He immediately sent a reply. "The offer is always open for you, Lieutenant. We would be honored to have you here." 6 months later, Jake stood in the main corridor of Forward Base Unity. It was graduation day for the first class of integrated officers. Humans and aliens in matching uniforms walked past, talking and laughing together. Some carried the symbols of their home worlds, but they all wore the same badge, a circle of stars representing unity among the species. Lieutenant Zara Lynn approached him in the corridor. She had been at the base for 3 months now, training alongside humans and aliens as an equal. Her white hair was shorter now, cut in the style of human military officers. "They did well today," she said, watching the new graduates. "Yes," Jake agreed. "They learned what I learned on Zenith Prime." "What is that?" Jake thought about his answer. "That we are stronger together than we are apart. That differences make us better, not worse. That courage and honor exist in every species." Zara Lynn nodded. Then, without warning, she brought her right hand to her chest and extended it toward Jake. It was the traditional Valkyran salute, given only to the most respected warriors. Jake stared at her in surprise. "Zara Lynn, you do not need to do that." "Yes, I do," she said quietly. "You taught me that a true warrior fights not just with weapons, but with compassion. Not just for victory, but for what is right." Other beings in the corridor had stopped to watch. Humans and aliens stood quietly as Zara Lynn held her salute. Then something amazing happened. One by one, the other beings in the corridor began to salute as well. Not the Valkyran salute, but their own species' gestures of respect. Alterians pressed their palms together. Kithara clicked their teeth in harmony. Granite bowed their heavy heads. Jake felt tears in his eyes as he looked around the corridor. A year ago, he had been alone among aliens who saw him as weak and primitive. Now he stood surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, all showing him respect. But the most important thing was not their respect for him. It was their respect for each other. In this corridor, humans and aliens stood as equals. They had learned to see past the surface differences to the common values underneath. Jake raised his own hand in a simple human salute, returning their gestures of respect. "Thank you," he said to all of them. "All of you." As the crowd began to disperse, Zara Lynn stayed beside him. "Do you ever think about going back to Zenith Prime?" she asked. Jake looked out the window at the stars. "Sometimes," he said, "but I think my work is here now, teaching others what we have learned." "What have we learned?" Jake smiled. "That the galaxy is big enough for all of us, that every species has something valuable to offer, That courage is not about being the strongest or the smartest. He looked at Zara Lynn. That sometimes the best thing you can do is just treat others with respect, even when they do not treat you the same way. Zara Lynn nodded. My people say that the greatest victory is not defeating your enemies. It is turning them into friends. Jake thought about Commander Vextar and all the aliens who had once mocked him. Some had become friends. Others had at least become respectful. A few might always see humans as inferior. But that was okay. Change happened slowly, one person at a time. Jake. 2 years had passed since Jake started training the mixed species units at Forward Base Unity. The program had grown from 1 small class to 5 full battalions. Officers from across the galaxy came to learn how different species could work together. Jake stood in his office, looking at reports from the field. The integrated units were performing better than anyone had expected. Human creativity combined with Alterian logic created new battle strategies. Valkyran honor mixed with Cathara patience built stronger teams. The galaxy was slowly learning what Jake had discovered on Zenith Prime, that differences made them stronger, not weaker. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Jake called. Colonel Martinez entered, followed by a tall figure Jake had not seen in 2 years. Commander Vextar stood in the doorway, his crystal skin dimmer than Jake remembered. The Alterian looked older, more tired. "Commander," Jake said, standing up, "this is unexpected." Vextar nodded formally. "Lieutenant Morrison, or should I say Major Morrison now?" Jake touched the new rank insignia on his uniform. The promotion had come 3 months ago, along with recognition from the Federation Council. "Jake is fine, sir." Colonel Martinez gestured for everyone to sit down. "Commander Vexitar came here with a request, Jake. I think you should hear it." Vextar leaned forward in his chair. For a moment he said nothing, just looked at Jake with those bright white eyes. "There is trouble in the outer systems," Vextar began finally. "A group calling themselves the Pure Coalition has been attacking mixed colonies. They believe different species should not live together." Jake frowned. "I heard about some attacks, but I thought they were just pirates." "No," Vextar said, his skin growing slightly brighter with emotion. "These are organized military strikes. They target any world where humans and aliens work together. 3 colonies have been destroyed completely." Colonel Martinez added, "The Coalition has advanced weapons and ships. They seem to know exactly when and where to strike." "What does this have to do with me?" Jake asked, though he was starting to guess the answer. Vextar looked uncomfortable. "The Federation Council has decided to send an integrated task force to stop these attacks. They want someone with experience leading mixed units." Jake waited for more explanation. "They want you to command the mission," Vexitar said quietly. Jake felt his heart skip. "Me? Command a task force?" "The Council was impressed by your training results," Colonel Martinez explained. "More importantly, you have the respect of multiple species. Soldiers will follow you into battle, whether they are human or alien." Jake looked at Vextar. "And you support this decision?" The Alterian's skin shifted colors slowly. "When you first came to Zenith Prime, I thought you were just another primitive human. I was wrong about many things." Vextar stood up and walked to the window. Outside, human and alien trainees were running exercises together, working as perfect teams. "The Pure Coalition represents everything I used to believe," Vexitar continued. "That some species are better than others. That mixing different races makes everyone weaker." He turned back to Jake. "You proved me wrong. Now I need your help. To prove them wrong, too. Jake thought about the request. Leading a training program was one thing. Leading soldiers into actual combat was something completely different. What kind of task force are we talking about? He asked. Colonel Martinez pulled out a data pad. 12 ships, 3,000 personnel from 15 different species, the most advanced weapons the Federation can provide. And who would I be? Working with? Vextar's skin brightened slightly. Lieutenant Zara Lynn has been promoted to commander. She will be your second in command. Jake almost smiled. She agreed to this? She requested it, Vextar replied. She said, and I quote, "If Jake Morrison is going to war, then Valkyrian honor demands I fight beside him." Over the next week, Jake watched as his task force assembled. Ships arrived daily, bringing officers and crew from across the galaxy. He recognized some faces from his training programs. Others were strangers who had only heard stories about the human who had changed everything. The flagship was called the Unity, a massive ship designed specifically for mixed crews. Human engineering had been combined with alien technology to create something new and powerful. Jake's quarters were larger than any room he had ever lived in, but they still felt strange and unfamiliar. Commander Zara Lynn arrived on the third day. She looked the same as always, with her white hair and violet eyes, but she carried herself differently now. Command suited her. "So," she said, finding Jake in the ship's war room, "we are really doing this." "Apparently," Jake replied, looking at the tactical displays showing coalition attack patterns. "Any second thoughts? About following you into battle?" Zara Lynn considered the question. "No. About whether we can win." She paused. "Maybe a few." Jake studied the enemy data. The Pure Coalition had hit 7 colonies in the past 6 months. Each attack was quick and brutal, leaving no survivors. The pattern showed careful planning and inside knowledge of Federation defenses. "They know where we are weak," Jake said, pointing to the attack locations. "These colonies were all recently established, with minimal defenses." "Someone is giving them information," Zara Lynn agreed. "The question is who?" Their first mission briefing included representatives from all 15 species in the task force. Jake looked around the room at faces that would have been impossible to imagine working together just a few years ago. The Alterian intelligence officer, Sub-Commander Keltron, had requested transfer to the task force. The Cathara tactical specialist clicked approvingly when Jake outlined their strategy. Even the usually quiet Granite communications officer rumbled agreement with the plan. "Our job is simple," Jake told the assembled officers. "Find the Coalition fleet and stop their attacks. But remember, we are not just fighting for the Federation. We are fighting for the idea that different species can live and work together." An Alterian captain raised his crystal hand. "Major Morrison, what if the Coalition is right? What if mixing species really does make us weaker?" The room became very quiet. Jake had expected this question, but it still felt like a challenge. "Captain, 3 years ago I was the only human on a station full of aliens who thought I was worthless. Today I command a task force that includes some of those same aliens. If mixing species made us weaker, how do you explain that?" The captain's skin dimmed with embarrassment, but Jake continued gently. "The Coalition believes that purity equals strength. But look around this room. We have Alterian logic, Valkyrian courage, Cathara patience, Granite stability, and human determination. Alone, each species has weaknesses. Together we cover for each other." Jake looked at each officer in turn. The Coalition attacks colonies because they are afraid. They are afraid that if different species learn to work together, no one will need their hatred anymore. A Valkyran lieutenant spoke up. Then we show them they are right to be afraid. Murmurs of agreement filled the room. Jake felt the energy change as his officers unified around their mission. Their first real test came 2 weeks later. Intelligence reported a coalition fleet massing near the Kepler system, home to a mixed human-Alterian colony. The attack was planned for the next day. We can beat them there, Zaralin reported from the navigation station. But just barely. Jake studied the tactical situation. The Coalition had twice as many ships, but they were older designs. The Unity Task Force had fewer numbers but better technology, and, Jake hoped, better teamwork. All ships, this is Major Morrison, he announced over the fleet communication system. We are about to face our first real test. Remember your training. Trust your shipmates, whatever species they are, and show the galaxy what we can accomplish when we work together. As the task force jumped to hyperspace, Jake felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders. 3 years ago, aliens had mocked him for being human. Now thousands of beings from across the galaxy were following him into battle. He thought about the colonists they were racing to save, humans and Alterians, who had chosen to build a life together, despite the prejudices of their own species. They represented everything Jake had been fighting for since his first day on Zenith Prime. Hyperspace jump complete, reported the navigation officer. Coalition fleet detected. They are beginning their attack run. Jake looked at the tactical display showing enemy ships diving toward the colony world. In a few minutes, he would find out if everything he had taught about cooperation and trust would work in actual combat. All ships, he commanded, engage the enemy. Show them what unity looks like. 2 years had passed since Jake started training the mixed species units at Forward Base Unity. The program had grown from 1 small class to 5 full battalions. Officers from across the galaxy came to learn how different species could work together. Jake stood in his office, looking at reports from the field. The integrated units were performing better than anyone had expected. Human creativity combined with Alterian logic created new battle strategies. Valkyrian honor mixed with Cathara patience built stronger teams. The galaxy was slowly learning what Jake had discovered on Zenith Prime, that differences made them stronger, not weaker. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Jake called. Colonel Martinez entered, followed by a tall figure Jake had not seen in 2 years. Commander Vexitar stood in the space battle began with a fury that shook the Unity from bow to stern. Coalition ships fired their weapons as soon as Jake's task force dropped out of hyperspace. Energy beams lit up the darkness between the stars like deadly lightning. "Shields holding at 80%, reported the granite engineering officer, his rocky voice calm despite the chaos. "Enemy weapons are older but powerful." Jake stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display as 12 Federation ships faced 24 Coalition vessels. The math was not good, but numbers had never been everything. "Commander Zaralin," he called to his second-in-command. "Take the Valkyrian squadron and hit their left flank. Keltaran, bring the Alterian cruisers around their right side. Force them into the middle." "What about you?" Zaralin asked, her violet eyes bright with battle excitement. "The Unity leads the center attack," Jake replied. "Right into their strongest position." Several officers looked at him with surprise. Charging directly at the enemy's strongest point seemed like madness. "Sir," said the Kithra tactical officer, clicking nervously, "the Coalition flagship has triple our firepower. A direct assault could destroy us." Jake looked around the bridge, at faces from 6 different species. All of them were watching him, waiting for his explanation. The Coalition believes that different species cannot work together effectively, Jake said. They think we will fight like separate fleets instead of one unified force. We are going to prove them wrong. He turned back to the tactical display. When they see the Unity charging alone, they will focus all their firepower on us. That is, when our flanking squadrons hit them from both sides. And if they do not fall for the trap? Asked the Altarian navigation officer. Then we fight our way through, Jake said simply. All ships, begin attack pattern Unity 7. The Federation fleet split into 3 groups, just as they had practiced hundreds of times in training. But this was not training. Real energy beams were cutting through space. Real ships were exploding when their shields failed. The Unity led 6 ships directly toward the Coalition center. Enemy fire concentrated on them immediately, just as Jake had predicted. The ship shook violently as energy blasts hammered their shields. Shields down to 40%, the engineer reported. Hull damage on decks 7 and 12. On the tactical display, Jake watched his flanking forces move into position. The Coalition was so focused on the frontal attack that they had not noticed the threat from both sides. All flanking squadrons, Jake announced over the communication system, execute now. Suddenly, the Coalition fleet found themselves under attack from 3 directions at once. The Valkyrian ships struck with precision and honor, their weapons targeting enemy engines to disable rather than destroy. The Altarian cruisers used perfect mathematical calculations to hit weak points in enemy shields. But something was wrong. The Coalition ships were responding too quickly, too perfectly. Their formation changes were exactly right for countering Federation tactics. Sir, Keltran's voice came over the communication channel. The enemy knows our attack patterns. They are ready for everything we do. Jake realized with cold certainty what this meant. There is a spy in our fleet. As if to confirm his fears, 3 Coalition ships suddenly broke away from the main battle. They were heading directly for the planet below, where the human Altarian colony was trying to evacuate. Commander Zara Lynn, Jake called urgently. Take 2 squadrons and intercept those ships. Do not let them reach the planet. What about the main battle? She asked. Jake looked at the tactical display. His task force was holding its own, but barely. If he sent ships to protect the colony, the main battle might be lost. Go, he ordered. Save the colonists. Zara Lynn's squadron peeled away from the main fight, racing to catch the 3 enemy ships before they could attack the planet. Jake watched them go, knowing he had just made the battle much harder for everyone who stayed. The Coalition commander seemed to realize the same thing. The remaining enemy ships pressed their attack with renewed fury, trying to destroy Jake's weakened fleet before the Colonial Protection Squadron could return. Shields down to 15%, the engineer reported. We cannot take much more of this. Jake studied the battle display, looking for any advantage he could find. That was when he noticed something strange. One Coalition ship was staying back from the fight, almost like it was observing rather than fighting. Tactical officer, he called to the Kithara. Scan that ship on the edge of their formation, the one that is not engaging. The insect-like officer's antenna twitched as he worked his instruments. Sir, that ship is broadcasting Federation communication codes. Jake felt ice form in his stomach. It is monitoring our communications? More than that, the tactical officer replied, his clicking sounds urgent. It is sending our tactical data to the other Coalition ships in real time. So that was how the enemy knew their every move. A Coalition spy ship was intercepting their communications, and telling the enemy fleet exactly what the Federation forces were planning. "All ships," Jake announced, "switch to Emergency Communication Protocol 7 and target that monitoring ship immediately." But as soon as Jake spoke, the spy ship began moving away at high speed. The Coalition commander knew his intelligence advantage was blown. "Sir, the spy ship is escaping," reported the navigation officer. "Let it go," Jake said. "We have bigger problems." Without their intelligence advantage, the Coalition fleet was fighting blind. But they still had superior numbers, and Jake's force was badly damaged. That was when something unexpected happened. The Kythera tactical officer began making rapid clicking sounds that Jake had never heard before. "What is he doing?" Jake asked. The Alterian communication officer's crystal skin brightened with understanding. "He is using Kythera battle language. It cannot be translated by normal communication systems." Jake realized what this meant. "Can the other species understand it?" "We trained together for 2 years. Zara Lynn's voice came over the communication channel. She had returned from protecting the colony just in time. "We learned each other's combat signals." Suddenly, Jake's mixed fleet had an advantage the Coalition could not match. Using a combination of Kythera battle clicks, Valkyrian honor calls, and Alterian mathematical sequences, they could coordinate attacks that the enemy could not predict or counter. The battle turned quickly after that. Coalition ships found themselves facing coordinated attacks from multiple species, using signals they could not understand or intercept. One by one, enemy vessels were disabled or destroyed. The Coalition flagship was the last to surrender. As Jake watched it power down its weapons, he felt exhaustion wash over him. His first major battle was over, and somehow they had won. "Casualty report," he called. 17 wounded across the fleet," the medical officer reported. "No deaths." Jake closed his eyes with relief. His people had fought brilliantly, but more importantly, they had all survived. "Sir," the communication officer called out, "we are receiving a message from the Coalition flagship." Put it on screen. The main display showed a figure Jake had never seen before. It was humanoid, but clearly not human, with gray skin and black eyes. When it spoke, its voice was cold and filled with hatred. "You may have won this battle," the alien said, "but you have not won the war. The pure Coalition will never stop fighting against the mixing of species. We will destroy every colony, every station, every world that allows different races to live together." Jake looked directly at the enemy commander. "Then you will be fighting for a long time, because this galaxy belongs to everyone who lives in it, not just the ones who look like you." The transmission ended. Jake knew this victory was just the beginning. The pure Coalition would attack again, and next time they would be ready for mixed species tactics. But as he looked around his bridge at officers from 6 different worlds working together like a perfect machine, Jake felt confident about the future. They had proved that cooperation was stronger than hatred, that unity could defeat division. The colony was safe. His fleet was intact. And somewhere in space, the Coalition was learning that their enemy was not just humans or just Alterians, or just any single species. Their enemy was everyone who believed in a better galaxy. 3 weeks after the battle at Kepler system, Jake stood in the briefing room aboard the Unity. The walls were covered with star charts and intelligence reports. Red marks showed Coalition attacks across the outer rim. There were too many red marks. 17 colonies hit in the past month, reported Commander Zara Lynn, her violet eyes serious. "The Coalition is moving faster than we can respond." Jake studied the attack pattern. After losing at Kepler, The coalition had changed tactics. Instead of large fleet battles, they were using small, fast ships to hit multiple targets at once. "They learned from our victory," said Sub-Commander Kelteron, his crystal skin dim with concern. "Now they strike quickly and run before we can arrive." The Cathera intelligence officer clicked nervously. "Our sources say the coalition is recruiting new members. They promise that pure species worlds will be protected if they join the cause." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. The coalition was using fear to grow stronger. They told species that cooperation with others would make them weak and vulnerable. "How many worlds have joined them?" he asked. 12 that we know of," Zara Lynn replied. "Maybe more. Some governments are too scared to admit they are working with the coalition." A knock at the briefing room door interrupted their conversation. "Come in," Jake called. The door opened to reveal someone Jake had not expected to see. Admiral Lisa Chen, the highest-ranking human in the Federation Navy, stepped into the room. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Admiral," Jake said, standing quickly. The other officers rose as well. "Sit down, everyone," Admiral Chen said. "We have serious matters to discuss." She moved to the front of the room and activated a holographic display. It showed the entire galaxy, with coalition territory marked in red. The red areas were growing larger. "The Federation Council is worried," Admiral Chen began. "The coalition is not just attacking colonies anymore. They are building a real military force with the goal of separating the galaxy by species." Jake looked at the display. "What kind of military force?" "Intelligence reports suggest they have over 300 ships now," the Admiral replied. "More importantly, they have weapons we have not seen before." The hologram changed to show images of destroyed colonies. The damage was unlike anything from conventional weapons. Entire cities had been turned to glass, as if melted by incredible heat. "What could do this?" asked Zara Lynn. Admiral Chen's face was grim. "We think they have found ancient alien technology. Weapons left over from species that died out long ago." Jake studied the destruction images. If the coalition had access to superweapons, his small task force would not be able to stop them. "Admiral, what are our orders?" he asked. "The Federation is assembling the largest fleet in our history," she replied. 500 ships from every member species, but that will take months to organize. She looked directly at Jake. "Until then, your task force is the only thing standing between the coalition and complete control of the Outer Rim." The weight of responsibility settled on Jake's shoulders like a heavy blanket. Thousands of colonies were counting on his small fleet to protect them. "There is something else," Admiral Chen continued. "Our intelligence sources have identified the coalition's main base. It is hidden in the Void Nebula, protected by the same ancient technology they are using as weapons." Jake knew about the Void Nebula. It was a region of space where sensors did not work properly, and communications were nearly impossible. Ships that entered it were often never seen again. "If we could destroy their base," Zara Lynn said thoughtfully, "we could end this war quickly." "Maybe," the Admiral agreed. "But getting there would be almost impossible. The nebula interferes with navigation systems. Ships get lost easily, and—" Idea began forming in Jake's mind. "Admiral, what if we did not use navigation systems?" "What do you mean?" Jake walked to the star chart. "Every species navigates differently. Humans use electronic systems and star charts, but the Cathara navigate by sensing magnetic fields. The granite feel gravitational pulls. What if we combined all their methods? The Kithara intelligence officer's antennae twitched with interest. A mixed-species navigation team could use multiple methods at once. If electronic systems fail, we could rely on biological senses. It might work, Keltran added, his crystal skin brightening. Ulterior mathematical calculations could verify what the other senses detect. Admiral Chen looked around the room at the mixed group of officers. You are talking about a suicide mission. Even if you reached the coalition base, you would be outnumbered 100 to 1. We have been outnumbered before, Jake replied. What matters is not how many ships they have, but how well they work together. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. The Federation Council authorized me to give you whatever support you need. What do you want? Volunteers, Jake said immediately. From every species. People who believe in what we are fighting for. Over the next week, ships arrived from across the galaxy. Not the newest vessels or the most powerful weapons, but something more valuable. Crews who had chosen to fight for unity over separation. The Valkyrian cruiser Honorbound arrived with Captain Nina Thorne, a human who had been adopted by Valkyrian culture. The Alterian science vessel Harmony brought specialists in ancient technology. Even a granite mining ship joined the fleet, its crew determined to protect the colonies they had helped build. Jake's task force grew from 12 ships to 30. It was still small compared to the Coalition fleet, but each ship carried crews from multiple species working together. The night before they entered the Void Nebula, Jake walked through the Unity's corridors. In every section, he saw humans and aliens working side by side. In the medical bay, a human doctor worked with a Kithara medic to treat injured crew members. In engineering, granite technicians showed Alterian engineers how to repair systems, by touch instead of instruments. He found Commander Zara Lynn in the observation lounge, looking out at the stars. Tomorrow they would enter the nebula and either end the war or die trying. Nervous? She asked without turning around. Terrified, Jake admitted, sitting beside her. I keep thinking about all the things that could go wrong. That is what makes you a good commander, Zara Lynn said. You worry about your people. Jake looked at the mixed crews working throughout the ship. 3 years ago, I was just a maintenance worker that everyone ignored. Now I am leading a fleet into the most dangerous region of space. You were never just a maintenance worker, Zara Lynn replied. You were always a leader. It just took the rest of us time to see it. She turned to face him. Tomorrow we will face the greatest test any of us have ever known. But I am not afraid. Why not? Zara Lynn smiled. Because I have seen what happens when different species work together as one. I have seen humans show courage that inspires Valkyrans. I have seen Alterians learn compassion from humans. I have seen all of us become better than we were alone. She stood up and gave Jake the Valkyrian salute. Whatever happens tomorrow, we will face it together. Jake returned the salute with a simple human nod of respect. Together, he agreed. The next morning, 30 ships entered the Void Nebula. Behind them lay everything they were fighting to protect. Ahead lay the Coalition base and the ancient weapons that could destroy all cooperation in the galaxy. But Jake was no longer afraid. He had learned something important during his years of being mocked and ignored and finally respected. The greatest strength was not in weapons or technology. It was in people who chose to stand together when everything tried to drive them apart.